everybody. Tammy, thanks for holding us accountable. We are live. Welcome to the Food Freedom Confidence Facebook group. This is our live training for today. We're on episode 42. We're going to talk about why you use food for comfort. Now, there's a couple different reasons why we did this as part one and part two. Part two is going to be next week. So part one is the emotional side of using food for comfort. And then part two is going to be more of the eating side of using food for comfort. So when we use food for comfort, a lot of things happen. So we're just going to give you 3 reasons of why you use food for comfort today, and we will dive into it a little bit. And Sierra is on her way here. So as we wait for her, say hello if you're watching, or if you're watching the replay. And I will introduce ourselves. So I am Hannah Hips, and Sierra Spencer is on her way, and we are the coaches in this Food Freedom Confidence group. We are donut eating, veggie loving eating psychology coaches, mind body nutrition coaches, and Sierra is a diet recovery weight neutral coach, and I am a yoga instructor and meditation leader. So the way that we approach food is very holistic. We don't just look at our diet, we don't just look at nutrition. There's 2 aspects. We look at the nutrition as well as who is eating, who we are, and the different layers that it takes to make us human, which then also reflects on how we eat. So a lot of that has a play in that. So hello and welcome, Sierra. Hey, Tammy. So good to see you. So I just did an introduction and told us what we're going to be talking about today. So I guess it is time for us to dive in. So I will start. So one of the main reasons why we use food for comfort is to avoid unwanted feelings, emotions, sensations in your body. So it is really a distraction from dealing with the emotion that is at hand. So how many of us have felt something, felt uncomfortable, felt angry, upset, sad, even happy, and you reached for food, for comfort, for celebration, for whatever. And in a way, it just helps us. I'm going to go more of the sad route, or using difficult emotions. It allows us to numb out. It distracts us from what we are dealing with, and we get to focus the pleasure. So really, we move away from pain and seek pleasure. And a lot of us, our coping mechanism is to reach for pleasure in food. A, because it tastes really good. And 2, it's something that, from being a baby, is something that we have used to help cope. So think about that as we were babies cry. What do they get? They either get a boob or a bottle. It's this in us to want to use food, nourishment, to soothe the pain that we have inside of ourselves. So just that's number 1. If this is relatable to you, please let us know. And we're going to talk about, as time goes on, just a little bit more of like what you can do to help you not use food for comfort or your only way of comfort. We'll go a little bit deeper into that.
Hannah, can you read out number 2?
So the second reason why we use food for comfort is we want to feel safe. We want to feel secure.
Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to what you were saying about, we use food as our emotional crutch or emotional comfort. And there is a totally normal, natural part of using food to cope from when we are babies. But the problem is when we start to use it to numb out, and we're not actually feeling our feelings, and we're using it to, escape our reality. And so we're going to talk more about what we can do about that. But there is a difference. Like, there's a part of emotional eating that's totally normal. You had a really bad day and, you want to eat some ice cream. Not a problem. You could have a really great day and still want to eat ice cream. You know what I mean? It doesn't have, our emotions don't have to be attached to food. Now, when it becomes an attachment, that's when it becomes disempowering and
So
where we
kind of
feel out of
touch base on
control.
like the safety aspect, like how food makes us feel safe.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, as babies, like when we need food. So we're going to talk a little bit about this next week, but I just want to touch on it really quick because when I think of safety, I think of um, needing to feel safe and secure in our body. Or a lot of times when we have a lot of anxiety, we use food to calm us down, to feel safe and grounded in our body, which is totally normal and totally okay. Again, it's just if you feel unsafe or you feel scared or there's a lot of stress going on in your life, food can naturally be very grounding, especially high fat, high sugar foods. It can help you feel safe. So I think when we can understand a little bit more about why we're doing something, it gives us a little bit more insight to now start to change the habit. So using food as safety is normal, and but it doesn't have to be your only. Food does not have to be the
Yeah, and
only
I
way you
think
can feel
that we're going to
safe.
touch on just this guilt shame cycle that kind of keeps us stuck in this loop of using food for comfort. So at the end of our 3 reasons, we'll touch base on that of like what that cycle looks like and why it's like, why can't I stop this? Why do I keep on doing it? Even though you might know why you're using food for comfort or emotional eating, it's like you know it's because of emotions, but you don't know what to do about it. So the last reason why we use food for comfort is mainly like control. And I'm going to say because we get triggered, there's a trauma response inside of us, and either using food for control. So either controlling, like, well, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat, right? That gives you a sense of control. That's like, hey, I'm in control. I get to choose this, and this is what I want to do because I don't want to feel that way, or I got triggered and I'm going to stick it to it and I'm going to eat this. So there's this other part also of control, of trying to control what we eat by not eating it, right? So we get triggered and we're really like, well, I'm not going to emotionally eat. I'm not going to do it. And that gives you control because you're like telling yourself you're not going to do something, right? Which often doesn't end very well. We end up swinging over to the other side and overdoing it and overeating. But there is this like food is wrapped up with control. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about this of like the control with food and what that does and how it really affects us to use food for comfort and emotional eating. So when we are trying to control, like we get a trauma response. So anytime that we get triggered by something, that's trauma, right? That's something inside of this. There's this wound that gets hit. And food often becomes that comfort to that wound, depending on most likely wounds come from when you're a child, right? Somebody said something, your parents acted a certain way, and food might have been that reward for you to feel safe, like Sierra was talking about, to feel secure, to feel like, okay, I can avoid the situation. So it becomes this control of like you can control your emotions, you can control yourself with food. So that's the main thing of like control. Is this all landing for you guys? I'm on vacation, have for sure done some boredom eating. Tammy, yes, yes, yes. um,
Why? Let's talk about this really quick, Tammy, because it goes right into our next point of the guilt and shame cycle. Boredom eating, or anytime you're eating, what happened, where this becomes a negative cycle is, let's say, we start to feel, there's some guilt, like, gosh, I've been eating so much, or I've been overeating. We're judging ourselves about eating. We start to feel some guilt, and we're like, okay, or maybe it's like we feel guilt for something else in our life. We feel shame, or feel embarrassed about something, or we don't feel good enough. So any kind of feeling of guilt or shame can then lead into feeling like, I need something to comfort this. Like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to handle these emotions. These are big feelings. Like, I don't want to feel this way. And so we need something to comfort ourselves. So we turn to food because it's easy, it's convenient, it's there, it's worked before. So we turn to food and we eat the chocolate bar, we eat the chips, and then we temporarily feel better. It's like, oh, I do feel a little bit better. It's an instant kind of like, it kind of calms you down. But then give it 10, 20 minutes later, you're feeling like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I was trying to eat clean this week. I was trying to eat good. I was trying to be good. And I just ate a whole bag of Doritos, you know, or like, oh, I just stopped at that gas station. I shouldn't have done that. Right. So then we feel guilt again. Okay. And then that guilt and shame that we feel from eating that thing leads us right back into not knowing how to cope because we don't have other coping mechanisms. So this is the guilt and shame cycle that a lot of our clients get trapped in, is this guilt shame cycle. And I did just do a funny reel, a fun video on Instagram. You can follow us at Food Freedom Confidence on Instagram. You can watch our reels and all our fun stuff there. But and that's what we're going to be talking about in part 2. Tammy said the shoulds. What should I be doing? We're going to be talking about the food part of emotional eating and like what is driving your emotional eating when it comes to food. Because today we focus more on the emotions and being able to handle emotions, which is hard for us. You know, our clients, I encourage you to go Google an emotional wheel and print out that emotional wheel. And I want you to start checking in with yourself with those different emotions. Because a lot of times we're not in touch with our emotions, which is what drives us to food. So the more in touch with your emotions you can get, the easier it is to not feel like out of control and guilt and
Yeah, and
shame
along
around
with
food.
boredom, I think we feel uncomfortable with boredom, right? Because we feel like we should always be doing something, you know, like I shouldn't be bored. I gotta like have this like anxious feeling of like having to do stuff. So boredom is another like invitation to get really present and be okay with not doing anything. Being okay, like, you know, just finding the delight and gratitude and pleasure in just being. And I think that's a huge practice and not a very easy practice for a lot of us because, you know, we have this internal voice inside of us saying that you should be doing something. You can't just sit here. Even if you are a patient, don't just sit here.
Yeah.
We got to be doing stuff. So
Yeah.
I just invite you just to sit with
Here.
that boredom.
Sure.
And see if you can get present with it and find pleasure and gratitude with that. You upped your walks because I love that, not because I was mad at myself. So good. Yeah, because you needed something to do and walking feels good. Awesome, Tammy. So good. All right, you guys. So why is this a problem? Kind of what if like what Sierra was talking about with the emotional wheel, or not the emotional wheel, the guilt cycle, because we don't learn how to handle difficult emotions. And so what we have to learn is to be able to handle these sensations. Really, it's the sensation in our body. It's not the difficult emotions that we can't handle. We can't handle the sensations that it causes in our body. So there, like every time we feel that sensation, it is like a memory, right? And so our body feels it and it takes you to that memory where it first happened. That's like the trigger response. And so we don't like that because then our mind remembers this bad experience that we had, and then we have these sensations in our body, and that's what we try to move from. So learning to be able to cope with the sensations in your body as well as the emotions, and having this different detached way with emotions. Like an emotion is neutral, really. It's not good or bad or anything else. An emotion is just something that shows up for us. We are human. We're going to have emotions all over the place, and they're okay. You know, right. And when we
We're not
allow ourselves to
robots.
express these emotions, then we're able to move through things a little bit easier. And a lot of our clients that move through our programs with us eventually don't use food for comfort anymore. You know, maybe at the end of the day, they're like, I want a bowl of cereal. Like Sarah is saying, yeah, of course you can eat and enjoy. And because you had a hard day. I mean, I do that all the time, but there's this no attachment to it that makes us feel bad or guilty about it too. So, anything else you want to add? Because I know we have a special announcement.
Yeah, really excited, you guys. So our special announcement is that we want you to stay tuned for tomorrow morning, where we're going to drop all the details about our special announcement tomorrow morning. You're not going to want to miss it. So stay tuned for tomorrow morning. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, those who are watching live. Thanks for watching the replay. For those of you watching the replay, if you have questions or comments about emotional eating, or maybe, you know, how is it hard for you to be able to cope with your emotions without turning to food? What other coping mechanisms have you tried? Have they worked? You know, we're going to talk a little bit more about the food part next week. But really, let us know in the comments how this was for you, and stay tuned for tomorrow. Drop like I'm excited, give us some love, because again, stay tuned for tomorrow morning. We're keeping us in suspense. That's right, Tammy. So we're going to be dropping some good juicy stuff tomorrow morning, so stay
All right,
on the
you guys,
lookout
thanks
for
so
that.
much for being here. We adore you and have a great day.